A Voice from Waterloo is the humble tale of an old soldier who was an eyewitness to, and participant in, many of the scenes he attempts to describe. Edward Cotton served in the 7th Hussars. Let's begin. Before the battle began, a Prussian patrol arrived at this picket, and informed Captain Taylor that part of Barlow's 4th Corps was at Street Lambert. This intelligence was immediately sent to the Duke of Wellington. On Vivian's right was the 4th Cavalry Brigade, under Major General Sir J.O. Vandeleur, composed of the 11th Light Dragoons, Colonel Slay, the 12th, Colonel the Honourable F. Ponsonby, and the 16th, Colonel J. Hay. In advance of the hedge, in front of the centre of the left wing, was Byland's Brigade of the Netherlands, deployed in line, composed of the 27th Dutch Light Infantry, the 5th, 7th, and 8th Dutch Militia, and the 7th of the Belgian Line. The 5th Dutch was in reserve. On the left of the Genappe Road, in rear of Picton's division, was the 2nd Cavalry Brigade, under Major General Sir William Ponsonby, composed of the 1st Royal Dragoons, Colonel Clifton, the 2nd or Scots Greys, Colonel Hamilton, and the 6th, Inniskilling, Colonel Mutter. Near the farm of Mont Street Jean, was the 10th Brigade of the 6th Division, which was to have been under Lieutenant General the Honourable Sir L. Cole, but he had not joined. Sir J. Lambert commanded this brigade, which was composed of the 4th, Colonel Brooke, the 27th, Inniskilling, Major Hare, and the 40th, Major Hayland. They had just landed from America, and had made forced marches from Assa. These were what the Duke termed Spanish, or Old Tried Infantry, most of whom being on their way from America did not arrive until the battle was fought. Sir Harry Smith, the hero of Aliwal, was on Sir J. Lambert's staff. In the hollow on the right of the high road in the rear of Ompteda, was the 1st or Household Brigade, under Major General Lord Edward Somerset, viz. The 1st Life Guards, Colonel Ferrier, the 2nd Ditto, Colonel the Honourable E. Ligon, the Royal Horse Guards, Blues, Colonel R. Hill, 1st Dragoon Guards, Colonel Fuller. In the rear of Alton Centre were the 3rd Hussars of the King's German Legion, under Colonel Sir F. Arenschild. Behind the centre was the Cavalry Division of the Netherlands, under Lieutenant General Baron Calaert, the 1st Brigade, Major General Tripp, the 1st and 3rd Dutch, and 2nd Belgian Carabineers. The 2nd Brigade, Major General de Guigny, consisted of the 4th Dutch Light Dragoons, and the 8th Belgian Hussars. The 3rd Brigade, Major General Merle, was composed of the 5th Belgian Light Dragoons and the 6th Dutch Hussars. On the right of the 3rd German Hussars were the Cumberland Hanoverian Hussars, under Colonel Hake. In the rear of Halkett's right was the 3rd Cavalry Brigade, under Major General Sir William Dornberg, consisting of the 23rd Light Dragoons, Major Cutcliffe, and of the 1st and 2nd Light Dragoons of the King's German Legion. In the rear of Byng was the 5th Cavalry Brigade, under Major General Sir Cahoon Grant, composed of the 7th Hussars, Colonel Kerrison, of the 15th Hussars, Colonel L. Dalrymple, and of the 13th Light Dragoons, Lieutenant Colonel Boise. The 13th did not properly belong to this brigade. The 3rd Division of the Netherlands, Lieutenant General Chassé, who so gallantly defended the citadel of Antwerp in 1832, was under Lord Hill. Its 1st Brigade, under Colonel Ditmas, was composed of the 33rd Battalion of Belgian Light Infantry, and the 2nd of the line, with the 4th, 6th, 17th, and 19th Battalions of Dutch Militia. It occupied the town of Braine-l'Alleud. The 17th was posted a little nearer to the 2nd British Division, to keep up communication. The 2nd Brigade, under Major General Dorbriem, composed of the 36th Belgian Light Infantry, the 3rd, the 12th, and the 13th Line, and the 10th Militia, was at the farm of Vieux-Forêt, beyond Braine-l'Alleud, for the security of our right flank, and to keep open the communication with our detached forces at Hal, etc., for the protection of our extreme right. The 6th British Brigade thus detached was composed of the 35th, 55th, 59th, and 91st Regiments, under Major General Johnston, with the 6th Hanoverian Brigade, Major General Sir James Lyon, and 2 regiments of Hanoverian Cavalry, under Colonel Erstorff, and a division of Netherlanders, under Prince Frederick of Holland. These troops were thus posted for the protection of Brussels against a coup de main by any detached force of the enemy. The reader will observe that the principal advantages of the Allied position were: 1. The junction of the 2 high roads immediately in the rear of our centre, from which branched off the paved broad road to Brussels, our main line of operation, and the paved road to the capital by Braine-l'Alleud and Olsenburg. This added to the facility of communication, and enabled us to move ammunition, guns, troops, the wounded, etc., to or from any part of our main front line, as circumstances demanded. 2. The advanced posts of Hougoumont, La Haye-Sainte, Papelet, and La Haye Farms, near which no enemy could pass without being assailed in flank by musketry. 3. The continuous ridge from flank to flank towards which no hostile force could advance undiscovered, within range of our artillery upon the crest. Behind this ridge our troops could maneuver, or lie concealed from the enemy's view, while they were in great measure protected from the fire of the hostile batteries. 4. Our extreme left was strong by nature. The buildings, hollow ways, enclosures, trees and brushwood, along the valley from Papelet to O'Hain, thickly peopled with light infantry, would have kept a strong force long at bay. Our batteries on the left on the knoll commanded the valley and the slopes. The ground from those batteries to O'Hain, which was occupied till near 8 o'clock p.m. by Vandeleurs and Vivian's brigades, was admirably adapted for cavalry. 5. Our extreme right was secured by numerous patches of brushwood, trees, and ravines, and further protected by hamlets, and by Lord Hill's troops en potence, part of which occupied Braine-l'Alleud and the farm of Vieux-Forêt, on the height above that town. Between 9 and 10 o'clock, the French began to take up their position in our front, on an opposite ridge running nearly parallel to ours, their centre being near La Belle Alliance, about 1,400 yards from ours, their right running east along the ridge towards Fristemont. At 200 yards behind La Belle Alliance is a crossroad, leading from Plancenoit to the Nivelles road, and intersecting the latter about midway between Hougoumont and Montplaisir, at which point there are now 2 small houses built, and visible from the Allied right wing. It was near this point that the French left terminated. The French right wing was the 1st Corps, under Lieutenant General Count Delaune, the same, with the exception of Durout's infantry and Jacquinot's cavalry divisions, which were at Ligny, that had been marching and counter-marching between Gosselies, Ligny and Frans on the 16th, and which, up to this time, had not fired a shot during the campaign. It was composed of 4 divisions of infantry, and 1 of light cavalry. The 2nd or left division, under General Donzelot, had its left upon La Belle Alliance. It consisted of the 13th Light, and 17th, 19th, 51st of the line, and was drawn up, like the whole of their front, in 2 lines about 60 yards apart. On their right was the 1st Division, under General Alex, the 28th, 54th, 55th, and 105th of the line. On their right was the 3rd Division, under Lieutenant General Marcognet, the 21st, 25th, 45th, and 46th of the line. On their right was the 4th Division, under General Darut, the 8th, 29th, 85th, 95th of the line. The 1st Division of Cavalry, under General Jacquinot, was on the right of this corps. It consisted of the 3rd and 7th Light Dragoons, and the 3rd and 4th Lancers, with 7 batteries to the corps. The left wing was the 2nd Corps, under Lieutenant General Count Ray, composed of 3 divisions of infantry and 1 of cavalry. The right division, the 5th, under Lieutenant General Bachelou, rested its right upon La Belle Alliance, and its left in the valley that runs round the south enclosures of Hougoumont. It comprised the 12th, 61st, 72nd, and 108th line. Girard's division was during the 16th and 17th at Ligny, where it was left on the 18th, it is said, by mistake. Upon their left, and facing the wood of Hougoumont, was the 9th Division, under Lieutenant General Foy, viz. The 4th Light, the 92nd, 93rd, and 100th line. On the left of the 9th Division, upon the ridge facing the buildings of Hougoumont, was the 6th Division, under General Prince Jerome Napoleon, comprising the 1st and 2nd Light, and 1st, 2nd, and 3rd line. The last 3 regiments were composed of 3 battalions each. On the left of the corps was the 2nd Cavalry Division, under Lieutenant General Pierre, being the 1st and 6th Light Dragoons, and the 5th and 6th Lancers. They crossed the Nivelles road in lines, and threw forward pickets towards Braine-l'Alleud and Uphain, thus keeping a lookout upon the extreme left of their army. Their artillery, composed of 5 batteries, was ranged along the front of the divisions. Behind their centre, close along the left of the Genappe road, was the 6th Corps, under Lieutenant General Count de Lurbow, George Mouton. The 19th and 20th Divisions only were present. They were formed in close columns of battalions, by divisions. The 19th Division was about 200 yards behind the right of the 2nd Corps, the 20th about 200 yards in the rear of the 19th Division. The former was under Lieutenant General Simmer, being the 5th, 11th, 27th, and 84th of the line. The 20th Division under Lieutenant General Jeanin was formed of the 5th Light, and 10th, 47th, and 107th line. There were 5 batteries to this corps. The 21st, or Tester's Division, was with Grouchy. Upon the right of the 6th Corps, separated only by the road, was the 3rd Cavalry Division, under Lieutenant General Demon, being the 4th, 9th, and 12th Light Dragoons, and the 5th Cavalry Division, under Lieutenant General Suburvey, being the 1st and 2nd Lancers, and the 11th Light Dragoons. They were in close columns. Their 2 troops of artillery were on their right. Behind the center of the right wing was the 4th Cavalry Corps, under Lieutenant General Count Miot. The 13th Cavalry Division, under Lieutenant General Wattier, comprised the 5th, 6th, 9th, and 10th Cuirassiers, and the 14th Division, under Lieutenant General Delort, consisted of the 1st, 4th, 7th, and 12th cuirassiers. Their 2 troops of artillery were in the center. In the rear of those divisions, in reserve, was the light cavalry of the Imperial Guard, composed of light dragoons and lancers, under Generals Lefebvre Desnouettes and Colbert, like the rest, drawn up in 2 lines, their artillery in the center. In the rear of the center of the left wing was the 3rd Cavalry Corps, under Lieutenant General Kellerman. It comprised the 11th Cavalry Division, the 2nd and 7th Dragoons, and 8th and 11th Cuirassiers, under Lieutenant General Leretier, and the 12th Division, viz. the 1st and 2nd Carabineers, brass-clad Cuirassiers, and 2nd and 3rd Cuirassiers, under Lieutenant General Roussel. Their 2 troops of artillery were upon their flanks. In the rear of those 2 divisions were the Horse Grenadiers and Dragoons of the Imperial Guard, in reserve, under the Generals Guyot and Hofmeier. Their artillery was in their center. In the rear of the 6th Corps and the 3rd and 5th Cavalry Divisions, near the farm of Versum, was the infantry of the Imperial Guard, in reserve, under Lieutenant General Drouot. It consisted of 4 regiments of grenadiers, 4 regiments of chasseurs, 2 regiments of tirailleurs, and 2 of voltigeurs, of 2 battalions each. The 1st and 2nd regiments of grenadiers and chasseurs formed the Old Guard, under Lieutenant General Friant. The 3rd and 4th regiments of grenadiers and chasseurs formed the Middle Guard, under Lieutenant General Count Moron, and the 4 regiments of voltigeurs and tirailleurs formed the Young Guard, under Lieutenant General Duhesme. They were drawn up in 6 lines of 4 battalions each. The Genappe High Road divided them into 2 equal parts. Their artillery, 6 batteries, was on their flank. The reserve artillery of the Guard, 24 guns, was in their rear. Such was Napoleon's disposition of his eager and gallant followers. This admirable order of battle, observes a distinguished military writer, at once grand, simple and imposing, and presenting to its skillful designer the most ample means of sustaining, by an immediate and efficient support, any attack from whatever point he might wish to direct it, and of possessing everywhere a respectable force at hand to oppose any attack made upon himself, from whatever quarter it might be made, was no less remarkable for the regularity and precision with which the several masses, constituting 13 distinct columns, advanced to their destined stations, than for the unusual degree of warlike pomp and high martial bearing with which the lines drew up in this mighty battle array. Seaborne, Volume 1. Both positions, whatever some prejudiced French writers may assert, offered everywhere fair fighting ground, on which all arms could act without any disadvantage. Sunday, the 18th of June 1815, which cast such a brilliant lustre on the military annals of Britain, broke but slowly through the heavy clouds. The rain descended in torrents, succeeded, as the morning advanced, by a drizzling shower which gradually ceased. Soon after break of day, all who were able were on the move. Many, from cold and fatigue, could not stir for some time. Fortunately, on most of us the excitement was too powerful to allow this physical inconvenience to be much felt, although, in after years, many suffered most severely from it. Some were cleaning arms, others fetching wood, water, straw, etc., from Mont Street Jean, my present place of abode, some trying, from the embers of our bivouac, to light up fires, most of which had been entirely put out by the heavy rain. At this time there was a continual irregular popping along the line, not unlike a skirmish, occasioned by those who were cleaning their firearms, discharging them, when practicable, which was more expeditious and satisfactory than drawing the charges. Our bivouac had a most unsightly appearance, both officers and men looked blue with cold, our long beards, and wet and dirty clothing drying upon us, were anything but comfortable. As morning advanced and all were in motion, one might imagine the whole plain itself to be undergoing a movement. Imagine 70,000 men huddled together. The buzzing resembled the distant roar of the sea against a rocky coast. Between 9 and 10 o'clock, the Duke of Wellington, with his usual firm countenance, passed along the line and was loudly cheered. His Grace was dressed in his ordinary field costume, white buckskin pantaloons, Hessian boots and tassels, blue frock coat with a short cloak of the same color, white cravat, sword, a plain low-cocked hat without plume or ornament, except the large black cockade of Britain, and 3 smaller ones of Spain, Portugal and the Netherlands. In his right hand he carried a long-field telescope, drawn out, ready for use. His Grace was mounted on his favorite chestnut charger, Copenhagen. He was followed by a numerous staff, several foreign officers, and the Russian, Austrian, Prussian and Spanish ministers, Count Pozzo di Borgo, Baron Vincent, Baron Muffling, and General Alava. I observed several in his train dressed in plain clothes. Their number was much diminished ere the day was over. The Duke generally rode alone, or rather without having anyone by his side, and rarely spoke, unless to send a message or to give orders. Sometimes he would suddenly turn around and glide past his followers, halting occasionally, and apparently paying no attention to his own troops. His Grace would observe through his telescope those of the enemy, which the docile Copenhagen appeared perfectly to understand, from his showing no impatience nor getting restive. The troops had been previously placed in their respective positions, and afterward the cavalry dismounted. About this time, the French bands struck up, so that we could distinctly hear them. I have no doubt, this was the moment when Napoleon assembled all his generals, and forming a circle, placed himself in the center, and gave his orders. This was in the hamlet of La Maison du Roi, about a mile in the rear of his center. Not long after, the enemy's skirmishers, backed by their supports, were thrown out. Extending as they advanced, they spread over the whole space before them. Now and then, they saluted our ears with well-known music, the whistling of musket balls. Their columns, preceded by mounted officers to take up the alignments, soon began to appear, the bayonets flashing over dark masses at different points, accompanied by the rattling of drums and the clang of trumpets. Could anyone behold so imposing a spectacle without awe, or without extreme excitement? Could anyone witness the commencement of the battle with indifference? Can anyone forget the impressions that are made upon the mind at such a moment? What a magnificent sight! Napoleon the Great, marshalling the chosen troops of France, against those of Britain and her allies under the renowned Wellington. Here, on one side, were the troops that had held nearly all Europe in bonds, and by whom kings and princes had been humbled and deposed, and although it was not the first time that many of us had faced them, yet, on the present occasion, they were under the immediate command of their idolized Napoleon. It was impossible to contemplate so formidable a power in battle array, without a feeling of admiration towards such noble antagonists. It presented altogether a sight that must be seen and felt to be duly appreciated, a sight that survivors recollect in after years. Such a scene fires the blood of the brave, and excites feelings and hopes, compared with which, all other emotions are cold and powerless. To him who's born for battle's strife, or bard of martial lay, 'twas worth 10 years of peaceful life. One glance at this array. Picture their infantry in front, in 2 lines 60 yards apart, flanked by lancers with their fluttering flags. In the rear of the center of the infantry wings were the cuirassiers, also in 2 lines. In the rear of the cuirassiers, on the right, the lancers and chasseurs of the Imperial Guard, in their splendid but gaudy uniforms, the former clad in scarlet, the latter like hussars, in rifle green fur-trimmed pelisse, gold lace, bearskin cap. In the rear of the cuirassiers on the left, the horse grenadiers and dragoons of the Imperial Guard, with their dazzling arms. Immediately in the rear of the center was the reserve, composed of the 6th Corps, in columns, on the left, and on the right of the Genappe road, were 2 divisions of light cavalry. In the rear of the whole, was the infantry of the Imperial Guard in columns, a dense, dark mass, which, with the 6th Corps and cavalry, were flanked by their numerous artillery. Nearly 72,000 men, and 246 guns, ranged with matches lighted, gave an awful presage of the approaching conflict. The enemy were quite in hand, all within call, there was nothing to prevent a movement being made. Why tarries Napoleon, so often termed the thunderbolt of war? Every minute's delay is a loss to him, and a gain to Wellington, whose game it was to stand fast until the Prussians arrived. Was the Emperor tampering with a portion of the Allies who had formerly fought in his ranks, and who might again rally around his eagles, as he had been led to believe, should a favorable opportunity present itself? French writers reply, and with some justice, that Napoleon waited for the partial drying of the ground, which the night's rain had rendered very unfavorable for cavalry and artillery. The grand martial display was calculated to heighten the enthusiasm of his legions, at the same time that it gratified the Emperor's unbounded ambition. The Allied army, a motley group, of nearly 68,000 men and 156 guns, though almost as numerous as that of the enemy, did not present so imposing a spectacle, being for the most part drawn up in checkered columns of battalions at deploying intervals, the cavalry being on the flanks and in the rear. According to the nature of the ground, the guns were skillfully ranged at points whence the melancholy work of destruction could be best effected, yet, from its undulating form, it concealed from the enemy's view a great portion of our force. Never, said Napoleon, had his troops been animated with such spirit, nor taken up their ground with such precision. The earth seemed proud of being trodden by such combatants. Never yet, I believe, said he at Street Helena, has there been such devotion shown by soldiers, as mine have manifested to me, never has man been served more faithfully by his troops. The 2 armies were now fairly in the presence of each other. The French lines being completed, the Emperor passed along them, attended by a brilliant and numerous staff, a forest of plumes waved around him. The troops hailed him with repeated shouts of Vive l'Empereur. The infantry raising their caps upon their bayonets, and the cavalry their casques or helmets upon their swords and lances. The parade over, the whole instantly formed columns. With an army thus animated by one sentiment, and doubtless calculating on being joined during the fray by more than a few of the motley group who stood in his front, it may readily be conceived that Napoleon fully participated in the general confidence of a signal victory. The force of the two armies, said the emperor just before the battle began, could not be estimated by a mere comparison of numbers, because the Allied army was composed of troops more or less efficient, so that one Englishman might be counted for one Frenchman, but two Netherlanders, Prussians, Germans, or soldiers of the Confederation, were required to make up one Frenchman. This concludes the third part of the story. Thank you very much for listening. Please subscribe for more stories and leave a comment.